Good morning. I'd like to call this County Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please silence all your cell phones if you have them. Take a moment of silent prayer. Thank you. I'll begin the roll call this morning with myself. Commissioner Culbertson is here. Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Vicki Cobb.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
All present and accounted for. Public comment. I have a couple people signed up for public comment, starting with Joe Herring. Please come forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Morning, Joe.
Morning. Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 315 North Street. You have a rezone in front of you today, and I sent an email up here to you to explain what I thought happened at that meeting. But the main thing is, staff did support this, said it met the golden factors. The Planning Commission thought otherwise after hearing the testimony of the neighbors, and that's their right. And the inaccuracies that were said during that meeting, I noticed several of them, but they weren't corrected. But one of the main things is the Planning Commission will often refer to the map that was approved in the comp plan as not the map they approved. The Board of County Commissioners, of course, is what sets policy, and that's the map that we go by. But if you look back to some of the original maps, this 2.5 acre, this tract of land that we're talking about today was approved by the Planning Commission to be 2.5 acres in the comp plan. But for some reason, they voted against that, and I know there's probably some legal terms out there. We've got some attorneys that could probably say, what kind of decision that was. But it just didn't make sense if they went against their own comprehensive plan that they voted for and went against a comprehensive plan that you voted for. That's I'm sure we have several other people in the audience that are going to discuss it again and do respect their opinions.
Just one question. The inaccuracies you're talking about, are they contained, just basically summarize what they are?
Yes, and the number of lots, ownership, stuff like that, the fact that it doesn't meet the golden factors when you have 2 acre, 3 acre tracts in the area.
I just want to make sure I had what you were saying.
Yes, in that email, that's what I put in there. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Next up, I have Steve Vernon. Please state your name and address, Steve.
Springfield Township. I have 2 general questions and 1 comment, and then I also have some comments about Development 24-118. I assume you're going to make time for those later on. The first question is, in reviewing last week's checkbook, that is on the 23rd, on page 2, there's a $271 check that allows Todd Thompson to join the Leavenworth City Rotary Club. Why are Leavenworth County residents paying for that? The second thing is, on Road 187, there are 5 bridges that have been taken down within about a 2-mile radius of that particular road, making movement along that road very difficult, and perhaps also affecting emergency vehicle services in that general area. The bridges are 2 on Eisenhower, there's 1 on 187, there's 1 on Stranger, and I think there's some people here that can speak to those other questions as well. My last question is, Fairmont Road heading east from Leavenworth County 5 has a speed limit of 35 miles per hour. Everywhere else in the county in a rural area with no businesses is set at 50. Is there a reason why the speed limit on that particular road remains at 35 miles an hour as opposed to 50? Okay, until the comments on Development 24-118 come up, that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, I have Gary Anderson. Is he here today?
Yeah.
Morning, Gary.
Morning. I'm Gary Anderson. I reside at 26237 187th Street. Dale Smith and Ingalore Smith couldn't make this meeting, but he wanted me to read this letter and give you copies if you'd like. So I'd like to do that. The main thing here is I've talked to almost every neighbor that surrounds this subdivision for the rezoning. 90% of the people I've talked to is opposed to it. There's numerous reasons, and this letter pretty much states most of the major reasons. So if you don't mind, I'd like to read that. To the Leavenworth Board of County Commissioners, let it be known that Dale and Ingalore Smith are opposed to the rezoning request from RR5 to RR2.5 in the case DEV 24-116. Our property borders the whole south side of this proposed subdivision, so we are opposing for the following. 1, does not conform to the character of the neighborhood. 2, all adjacent properties to this subdivision, proposed subdivisions, are all ag land providing beef cattle, which we have grave concerns of vast runoff of possible polluted waters for our cattle. 3, added traffic to an already dangerous and overused 2-lane county roads along 187th Street and Eisenhower Road. Until 4-lane roads are added to this area to handle the current traffic of cars, construction equipment, large semis, and farm equipment, it would seem senseless to keep adding to this issue. Number 4, larger infrastructures which require higher taxes to support more sheriffs on duty and a larger fire department, which currently doesn't even exist. 5, more taxes will have to be paid by all for more classrooms and teachers in the Tonganoxie School District to accommodate such a large subdivision. Thank you for consideration of this matter, and that you consider that your own planning commission voted against this request with a vote of 6-3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like copies of this?
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next up, we have Joanne Aaron.
Thanks. Thank you.
Morning, Joanne.
I'm Joanne Aaron. I live at 26311 179th Street. I border this property on the east side, on part of it. And this farm was purchased by my husband's grandfather in 1882, and it's been continuously in the family, and it's been continuously a farm. We have cattle up against them, and cattle smell, and people don't like it, but people smell too. I'm concerned about the runoff. It's going to be, the little stranger runs through our farm, and part of the runoff comes off of this property. You get people that don't care about antifreeze, oil, and those kind of things that they just dump in their yard or anywhere, and that's going to run off into where our cattle do go get the ponds where they drink from. I have 147 acres in this particular section that is up against this. I have another additional 200 acres across the road. We're gradually being forced out, and I can't go to my county commissioner because she's involved in it. We have the 5th generation living on this farm, and my grandson wants the farm when we're all gone to keep it going. We're not going to sell it. And I don't like, the being crowded out. Because when they build all these houses, our taxes go up, and we're taxed so much right now. aggravates me. But I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, are you at the Planning Commission? Did you say your family's been here since 1882?
Yes, March 25th, 1882.
That's a long time.
Yes, it is. It's been a lot
It's
of
great
hard
that you
work.
kept that land in your family.
And we had a dairy when my husband was still alive. We had a dairy, and people came out and they built new homes on our road, and they didn't like the smell of the dairy, and they wanted to shut us down. But that dairy was there before. Those cattle have been there long before those people ever were out there.
That's the smell of money. That's what my
Money
dad
isn't
used to
very
say.
good anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, I have a Karen, and I don't know if I'm saying this last name right, Bottery? Botari. Good morning.
Hello, my name is Karen Botari. I live at 19250 Stranger Road. I own about 130 acres that was purchased by my grandfather back in the 30s. It's always been agriculture in nature. I grew up on a working dairy farm. Us and the Aarons were pretty close there and did a lot of work back in the days. I joined the Navy to sleep in, and it worked. But like I said, as a resident all my life of this property, but for the time I spent in the United States Navy. Like I said, we raised it was an active dairy farm. We row cropped from the late 60s, 70s, and 80s in my lifetime, but prior to that, in my father's lifetime and my grandfather's lifetime. It's a farming community. Building this many houses is, quite frankly, in my opinion, inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. Also, in my opinion, it's not responsible due to the lack of fire department. We have issues there that have been unresolved. We don't have the equipment, the staff. There's utility impact. We already have an extremely low water pressure. Will impact the wildlife in the area. The traffic and congestion is something I just wouldn't even want to imagine. I mean, the roads are just one lane each way. And the impact to the school, I sit on the school board. I can't imagine we lack busing right now. I can't imagine you'd have to have probably 2 buses at the boundary line. Kids in my neighborhood, especially with the roads out, they're on the bus over an hour, and the hour's the limit. They were on the bus close to that before all the bridges were out, and I hear from parents all the time that they're just really upset with the fact that their kids are on the buses. But that doesn't solve this problem. This problem would just be additional cost to the district because we have to have that many buses for that many households getting back to the school. That's all I have for today, and I appreciate you considering our opinion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all I have signed up for public comment. We'll move on to administrative business. I have a Operation Green Light proclamation this morning to read. Whereas the residents of Leavenworth County have great respect, admiration, and the utmost gratitude for all the men and women who have selflessly served our country and this community in the armed forces. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of those who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and the way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And Leavenworth County seeks to honor individuals who have made countless sacrifices for freedom by placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all. And approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually. And an estimated 20% increase of service members will transition to civilian life in the near future. And studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life. And active military service members transitioning from military service are at a high risk for suicide during their first year after military service. And the National Association of Counties encourages all counties, parishes, and boroughs to recognize Operation Greenlight for the veterans. and Leavenworth County appreciates the sacrifices of our United States military personnel and believes specific recognition should be granted. Therefore, be it resolved, with designation as a green light for Veterans County, Leavenworth County hereby declares November 4th through Veterans Day, November 11th, 2024, a time to salute and honor the service and sacrifices of our men and women in uniform, transitioning from active service. Therefore, be it further resolved that in observance of Operation Greenlight, Leavenworth County encourages its citizens in patriotic tradition to recognize the importance of honoring all those who made immeasurable sacrifices to preserve freedom by displaying green lights in a window of their place of business or residence from November 4th through the 11th of 2024. Now, therefore, I, Jeff Culberson, as chairperson for the Leavenworth County Commissioners, set my hand and affix to the seal of Leavenworth County, Kansas, this 30th day of October, 2024.
Very good.
Next up, administrative business. Do you have anything this morning, Ms. Lofty? Okay. Also, I have a letter that we want to take advantage of the mailer that the tax statements are sent out in, so it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything to send this letter out because we're sticking in a letter that's already going out. That was brought up last year.
Yep.
Asking how much money did the commissioners spend on sending this out? And the answer is none because we piggybacked it onto your tax statement letter, which was going out anyway. Update. Local ad valorem tax reduction, or LAVTR. In 1965, the state legislators and local governments saw the burden on property taxes was too high. Property taxes were going up and up to try to fund all the necessary services and assets provided by local government. The state, county, and city governments came up with an agreement, KSA 79-2959, the Local Ad Valorem Tax Relief, or LAVTR law, that the state would return part of the sales tax generated back to the cities and counties to be used to offset high property taxes. The problem is, in 2003, the state needed money to balance their budget. That was when the legislators first decided to keep our LAVTR funds for themselves. By doing so, they were not following the law. To get around that, they passed a moratorium on funding the LAVTR every other year after that. They passed a law saying they don't have to follow the law. Leavenworth County alone should be receiving about $4 million in LAVTR funds each year to lower your property taxes. That would be about 4 full mil reduction in property tax. But we haven't received any of that money since 2003. Last year, your county commissioners sent out an informational letter in your tax statement explaining what LAVTR involves, since most people didn't know how LAVTR was intended to help lower your property taxes. LAVTR was structured to have the state collect 1.5% in sales tax from you, then return it to the counties and cities from where the tax money came from to offset high property taxes. Our letter to you was successful in that citizens brought a lot of questions about LAVTR to our state legislators. So much attention that our legislators had to act on LAVTR, and act they did, but not in the manner needed to help Leavenworth County. Instead of following the current law and paying the counties and cities the LAVTR funds they collect from us, they abolished the law requirements to return of taxes. Except, legislators kept the part of the law where they still collect the 1.5% sales tax from you that was intended for LAVTR. They just keep our money, now with no accountability of a recorded vote each session to show they made a conscious choice to keep your tax dollars from you. Leavenworth County is particularly burdened with high property taxes because the state mandates the cities and counties use property taxes, not sales tax, to fund our budgets. Leavenworth County has about 50% of our total valuation exempt from property taxes due to Fort Leavenworth, federal and state prisons, the VA, churches, and schools. About $4 billion in valuation on Fort Leavenworth alone pays no property taxes. This means the other 50% of us have to make up for the 50% not paying. Only 33,000 parcel owners pay property tax, so a few people pay a lot. Sales tax is paid by hundreds of thousands of people, meaning that many people pay a little. The idea of LAVTR is many more people help pay the cost of our county services. LAVTR would not mean a sales tax increase. It would be just returning the 1.5% sales tax that you already now pay. About 6 years ago, the President of Leavenworth County Commission brought this problem front and center to Topeka. We put together all the requests and memos from hundreds of cities and counties across the state that have been presented to Topeka over the last 20 years, begging the state to return our own money collected by the LAVTR process. Most legislators, if not all, had no idea what we were even talking about, because most were not present when payments to the counties were canceled. We have been spending the last couple of years educating them on this issue. The latest action on getting Topeka to understand our financial dilemma is an educational forum about LAVTR presented by the Kansas Association of Counties. KAC put together a 3-part public announcement packet and have assembled several informational documents available to you. Any taxpayer can go to the KAC website, and there's a link on this letter that's going out for them, and easily access all they need to know about LAVTR. Simply type in LAVTR in a search window on the website. Some of our legislators have been cooperative about working on a solution. Some have not. Why? The short answer, we are told, is they don't have the money. The reason this makes no sense, it's not their money to begin with. It's ours. We collect it for them, give it to them. They are then supposed to calculate the percentage return, 65% based on population per district and 35% based on valuations. They simply don't give it back to us. Make no mistake, this is not a new additional added tax. This tax is already being paid by you. Topeka just does not return your tax dollars to you. Your legislators are elected to work for you. This has to be fixed by the legislative work in Topeka. It cannot be corrected locally by the city or county elected officials. And then I've got a list of the state representatives and their email and phone numbers. So if you guys all agree to this, then we can put this in with exact statements
I'd
going
just
on.
like to see a paragraph added about the constitutional amendment.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
We'll add that in there too, because it's got to be less than 2 pages, so we still got that much room. We could add a little bit, because it'll cost something if we go over 1 page, so we want to keep the cost to nothing.
Because we've been working very hard with legislators. We've been testifying, talking to them. We had them at our legislative breakfast. And LAVTR is important, but 26 states have a cap on property taxes. Kansas doesn't. The Senate voted on it, went to the House, and died. We got to have them do something because we're getting taxed out of our houses. I have constituents calling me saying, Mike, you're going to have to move out of Kansas if something's not done.
Yep.
So we've got to keep the pressure on our legislators. And you folks, contact your legislators. We've got to cap the property tax in Kansas.
6 years we've been working on this,
Yeah.
and they can pass star bonds and getting the Chiefs or
Sports
the Royals
betting.
over here
And-
overnight.
and
or
one day.
betting overnight. But they can't do this in 6
What's
years.
even more disturbing on this is I didn't realize this, and I've said this before when I was working for the city of Lansing. When I got to the county, it opened my eyes on a lot of things. One of them is how money buys elections. I'm just going to say it the way it is. When I have my legislators tell me that their party, and I don't care what party you are, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Heathen, I don't care what party you are, but when they were told by their rank and file to vote a certain way, then you're not representing Leavenworth County. I'd rather be the only no vote trying to fix this than be walking around saying, well, I voted with this because I had pressure on them. That's not what it's about. But I do think, and Mike and I spoke in Hayes about this a couple of years ago, and I know Jeff and Vicki and Doug have all spoken on this. The more information we get out, that's why this letter's going out, there's a lot more questions being asked. And I'm hoping in time, I'm very hopeful in time, since these folks get elected every 2 years, except for the Senate, that enough pressure will come that people will take this. If I was running for a state office, this would be the first thing I would put on that I'm going to do, because this will save you folks so much money. It's not just the counties. The cities aren't getting their portion back either. And to tell me that that you don't have it when you've got a $3 billion, maybe it's $4 billion surplus, no. We got to fix this, and the only way it can be done is people asking those hard questions. So
That's right.
Or carrying a bill.
Yeah, that's true, Doug.
Which is what needs to happen now, is they need to present a new bill to not only bring back the LAVTR, but to enhance it, because that is the answer to shift weight off property tax onto sales tax and income tax. Anybody have any more administrative business?
I just had one thing, just make sure. I know the county commissioners are paying for it themselves out of their own pocket. We'll make sure Mark's got the money for the porta potty on the Veterans Day parade. So if you haven't paid him, dig in your pocket, county commissioners, and pay him. Okay.
I think we all did, didn't we? Is everybody?
There's one. There's one that's not answering the question.
One left.
So
That's good. Very good.
that's
We'll get that taken care of today. Anything else for administrative?
I don't have anything.
I just had one small thing. I had several people that have contacted me, and they were concerned with the fact that St. Luke's, health systems is kind of pulled out of Leavenworth. Well, and why haven't we done anything about it? I just want to make clear that we have no control over what corporations or hospitals or any other business does. We weren't informed in advance that this was going to happen. We found out that happened at the same time as the public found out that it happened.
But even if we were, there isn't anything we can
But
do.
even if we were, there's nothing that we can do to make any organization remain, private entity remain in the county or in the city. So I just wanted to clarify that for people to know that, it affects us too when services leave, but that hopefully the services that have been leaving, there will be other medical practices or groups that will come back into the city and the county. So that's just kind of what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Yes,
A
sir.
couple things. I want to read this letter for folks down in the south part of the county that have been having their railroad crossings blocked. This is the letter sent from the county commissioners to the Federal Railroad Administration and the Union Pacific Railroad on behalf of the citizens with their crossings blocked. Dear Mr. Jones, and that's the Public Affairs Director at Union Pacific. Dear Mr. Jones, on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners of Leavenworth County, Kansas, I wish to bring the attention of the Union Pacific Railroad a continuing problem occurring in the county caused by blockage of public roads in the vicinity of 170th, 166th, and 161st Streets near the unincorporated area of Lanate. These blockages deny citizens living in the area access to public roads to the north and south, as well as delaying or denying access by emergency services. Of note, a significant blockage occurred on Friday, September 13, 2024, when a Union Pacific train blocked the use by the public in the area from 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Additional blockages have previously occurred, and September 25th, 2024 saw an additional blockage. The County Commission is aware of the necessity of trains from time to time blocking road crossings, but the incidence of blockages in the area has become a threat to public safety and welfare. A complaint on this matter is being filed with the FRA as well as with the Union Pacific complaint portal on its website. Prompt attention to this matter by the Union Pacific with the goal of minimizing the blockage of public roads is in order. Please advise us of the action to be taken by Union Pacific. And that's signed by our chairman. So I wondered if we had received any kind of a response to that.
We did. I just got a message right before the meeting, but I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. So as soon as I listen to that and call them back, and then I'll let you guys know what they said.
Very good.
Yeah, we did get a response.
That's good. I have second thing. I just wanted, this is probably for Mr. Knoll. When contractors or subcontractors of the county do core sampling, what's the typical requirements?
On a road?
Yes.
Morning, Bill.
Morning, Commissioners. Typically, core samples on the roadways would be taken as part of a construction project for Leavenworth County. That would be probably every one that I've been here and been a part of. But there is a right-of-way permitting process that is handled downstairs through our department, and any contractor wanting to work in the right-of-way, whether it's core sampling or other utility work, is required to get a right-of-way permit.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. And then the last question I had on one gentleman's comment about purchasing memberships. Is that discretionary to elected officials, and that's out of the discretion of the commission?
Well, commissioners, we talk a lot about budgets. Elected department heads are a little bit different than the appointed department heads as far as their budget's concerned. The budgetary authority of the commission over the elected department heads is approving or denying their budget and adjusting the amounts within it. Once they have that budget, most of their expenditures are discretionary.
So the discretionary amount that was mentioned would be directly accountable to the department head or
Yes.
the elected official?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Anybody else have anything?
Just one thing real quick.
Yes, sir.
We'd received an email from residents on the private road, and has anybody responded to that? Basically telling them how to get this into the county's road system or any of their concerns?
I'm not sure I've seen that.
Oh, you didn't get that email?
I don't believe I've seen that.
Oh, okay. I thought it went to the BOCC
When did you receive that?
last week.
I didn't see it either.
I didn't either.
Oh, well then I guess I'll follow up with that later.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
All right. But it is a private road. It's a private road issue, and I think there's very little the county can do about it.
Private road.
So,
We do have a policy in place.
yes,
And we can certainly share that policy with the individual.
that's correct. All right. All right. And it addressed HOAs and things like that, and we don't have any control over
Okay,
HOAs.
the homeowners, yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry. I thought it went to the whole board. We'll follow up with that later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything for administrative business? If not, move on to consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting on myself. Aye.
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 Consent agenda passes. Moving on to formal board actions. Consider a motion to approve amendments to, as presented to the sick leave buyback, and shared leave policies effective January 1, 2025. Mr. Lothry.
Commissioners, we've been discussing this potential change since I said August. It's probably actually been longer than that. We have, unfortunately, expenditures increase in our health care coverage, and trying to watch that and see where it's going to end up at the end of the year, and it's not trending where we'd like to see it. So, as I discussed in August, there may have to be some changes to other benefits to help offset that increased cost, and this is the one that I've been proposing. We've discussed it a couple of times, and I did get some feedback from the commission that rather than it simply go away, maybe we could make an adjustment to it. So that's what I am proposing is an adjustment that would cap sick leave accruals at 1,000 hours, and sick leave buyback would be similarly capped. Anybody that has accrued more than 1,000 hours doesn't lose it. They still have the ability to utilize it for as long as they're a county employee. It's simply at the end, if they leave the county or retire, the amount that they can convert to a sick leave buyback or convert to pay for retiree benefits. And I would answer any questions that you might have.
I'd like a little more time on this. I'd like to table this.
So we have time to look at it better.
Well,
I agree with that.
I think we're going to have to look at it. I'm always in for the employees. In fact, it used to get me in trouble in Lansing when I always supported the employees. I think we're going to have to look at it somehow because the amount of funding we're paying. But I also don't want to cut it just right out from underneath them. I have no problem having a little more time to look at it, but I see what Mark's trying to be, trying to take care of the county's budget at the same time trying to take care of the employees. And we could add a couple things here. It doesn't have to be 1,000. It could be 1,500, or we could say you got this much time to use it. Change that date to get it. The problem with it is we cannot continue to pay this kind of buyout in the future things. It's just going to break the county, and it's a service I want to offer to the employees, but I want them to know that there's eventually we're going to have to do something about it. Not cancel it, but there's going to have to be some way addressed it.
I agree, but I'd like a little more time.
I have no problem with that.
Is that your motion, Doug?
I have a question for Mr.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned when we visited about this, the cost, if everybody would claim this, what the cost of the county would be. What would that be?
Commissioners, currently, as the policy stands, the impact to the county, and obviously it's spread out over years as people leave and retire, but the current impact to the county is about $1.2 million on the buyback, and then the conversion to benefits, it's more like $4 million. As proposed in this change, it affects about 25 employees. The rest of the employees are either under the 1,000 hours or just right out of 1,000 hours. So this change would impact about 25 employees who have over 1,000 hours currently. I'm trying to make sure that those who are close to retirement have the notice. That's why I'm asking
opportunity,
60 days notice, so that they're not left last minute trying to make a decision. That's also why I started talking about this back in August, just so there was plenty of notice.
Right.
And that's my concern is tabling is not a problem. It's just that impact of the effective date. So if we table it to make a decision, are we going to keep it at the January 1 implementation? Are we going to kick it down the road a little bit? But if we delay it too long, then we lose the benefit of making the change as well. So
I have no problem,
I'm
Mark.
open to whatever, any suggestions you might have.
Mark, I have no problem with January 1st, not pushing it down. I think we need to get on this and make a decision and not push it too far down. When you're talking $2 or $3 million, this county's in trouble. We're just not building enough houses. We're just not bringing enough commercial. The property tax has been restricted by the state, so we got to pay the bills. So we have to look at things like that. But at the same time, I will never cut it totally out from underneath somebody. But this is not something we need to sit on too long. I'm pretty comfortable having a discussion in 2 weeks about some things that we might want to talk about, if you folks are.
2 weeks.
But 2 weeks is what I'd recommend.
That's my motion to table this for 2 weeks.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next, consider motion to accept the roadway in Orchard Meadows by Precision Contracting and Development with an extended maintenance bond period. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Commissioners. Today for your consideration is the request from the developer to accept the roadway in Orchard Meadows by Precision Contracting and Development with an extended maintenance bond period. Per current policy of Leavenworth County Public Works, new subdivision roadways being constructed are required to have contracted KDOT certified inspectors. And testing must be completed in accordance with the frequency charts provided to the developer construction engineering firm at the pre-construction meeting. At these pre-construction meetings, we do hand out checklists and provide all of the information necessary for the testing to be completed. That meeting is held with the developer, the inspection project manager, and the construction company that is going to actually build the roadway. Per the developer's statements, the third-party engineering contractor failed to complete all the necessary testing. There were a couple of test results provided that did not pass, and we are unaware of whether or not the contractor was notified of those tests and corrected those deficiencies, or whether or not, and they were simply just not tested again. That would be a fairly normal procedure, is if you find a test that did not pass for a backfill of a culvert, you would notify the contractor of that deficiency, and the contractor would complete a further compaction effort at that location, whether that requires some of the material to be removed or not. Furthermore, there's also a question whether the tests lacking compaction were taken at the proper location and procedures. This was based upon the wrong proctor being used for the location. It is not the county's responsibility to determine all of these factors. These are certified KDOT inspectors and inspection firms. They should be competent to provide this information. It has been completed in other subdivisions. Generally, if you are a developer, you are going to be hiring that third party, or whether you're not, even in the county setting, we're going to hire that third party contractor to ensure that all the testing is completed. It is their responsibility. This is not necessarily a reflection upon the development firm. They followed county procedure with the proper scope in their process. I did personally attend the proof roll that was completed after the aggregate was placed and compacted and prior to the asphalt being laid. This is not a requirement of county staff. I was there to witness the roadway had no rutting or pumping at that time of the proof roll and did not have any failing locations. This is a visual inspection that I completed. It is subjective. That is why we have moved away from that subjective observation of a proof roll into a more quantitative data analysis testing policy. It was the standard method of compaction verification prior to the adoption of the current county KDOT certified inspection policy. In the past, there have been at least 2 other circumstances where there were deficiencies or lacking testing by the inspection firm, and the board has approved a 3-year maintenance bond in those locations. I do want to state, though, to be clear here today, that each case is unique and should be considered as an individual case. These are not exactly the same situations that dictate that is necessarily the path that you should take in every situation. It does not have the surface segregation that was present in one of the instances, and it does not have the same situation that was necessarily seen at the Baser Elementary School, where the roadway simply just lacked the amount of testing that is required by KDOT. In that case, KDOT did already accept the roadway prior to the county, even though they did not meet the KDOT frequency requirements for the testing.
So this inspection firm is on the county's list of qualified firms to hire?
It is on the KDOT pre-qualified list of firms to hire.
Okay.
They are.
It's really not the contractor's fault then?
No,
it's a firm that's KDOT.
It is. The lack of testing is the responsibility of the contracted construction engineering firm, SMH, that was on site. They should have completed all the necessary testings in accordance with KDOT policy. I believe that their field inspector possibly lacked the information necessary or the knowledge that would have been required. He was on site for daily inspections visually, but he did not seem to understand current KDOT policy and did not complete the testing in accordance with it.
But they're still on the list of qualified KDOT inspectors.
Yes, yes. Their main office, I believe, what I've been informed, is out of Manhattan.
Okay.
And they have opened a satellite office in Olathe.
So what kind of an extended maintenance bond are we looking at?
They have proposed a 3-year extension of the maintenance bond. That would, with the demand for houses in that area and the number of lots in the subdivision, within 3 years, they would most likely have all of the houses built, and they would be completed with all their construction traffic prior to that point. So if the road were to have failures, they feel that it is most likely to occur within that 3-year period. I would agree with that to a certain extent. I mean, a roadway should not require maintenance at the end of a 3-year period, but also it should not require maintenance until at least year 7, typically for the first course of chip and seal. We do generally advance that 7-year chip and seal just because we want to extend the life of these as much as possible.
So you good with 3 years?
I think from previous discussions, 3 years is about as long as most contractors are able to get. It is unlikely that I know there was discussion previously about a 5-year maintenance bond, but I think
anybody's going to do that.
I don't think a lot of bonding agencies are willing to take that.
You couldn't get a bond anyways for that.
So I think our options, the other option that faces the developer faces due to the situation and has stated in writing, is that if the extended maintenance bond period is not allowed and the roadway is not accepted into the county system, they would have to replat the subdivision into a cross-access easement, they would cut the roadway off prior to the furthest west lot and create a cul-de-sac. That way it complies with current cross-access easement standards. It would not be a connecting roadway. It was required to connect into the adjoining subdivision as part of an access management policy in accordance with the subdivision regulations.
Bill, what does KDOT do when their rules have not been followed? Do you report them back to them, or how do you go about getting things like this corrected? And last year, not the last few years, but years back, county's been sued on a regular basis, or we've had to go back and sue somebody to make them fix their road. I mean, the roads aren't cheap.
No, roads are definitely not cheap. I believe the cost estimate for this road was in excess of $600,000. In KDOT's situation, they would oftentimes do cost deductions. They are the owner of the roadway, so they're the ones paying for it. So they would just, in some cases, whether it's asphalt deficiencies or other deficiencies, they would deduct payment. But the county's not in a position to deduct payment from the contractor.
I understand that.
And I believe they may have also, I don't know, accepted extended maintenance bond periods in the past as well.
Okay, thank you.
We did have one of these occur prior, not exactly the same thing, but we did accept an extended bond payment on that one as well, right?
Eagle Crossing had an extended maintenance bond period accepted with a mastic coat requirement of the roadway. They did have to come back prior to the mastic coat being placed and do some spot repairs where they had asphalt failure in the different locations. And then we did accept the roadway after a 3-year period. And we're currently under the 3-year review period of the Baser Elementary School on 179th Street, where McCown Gordon offered an extended maintenance bond period, and the board accepted that. In that situation, there was a lack of testing as well.
Okay.
So, and I don't know if this is for you or for Mark, are we setting a precedent if we accept this where we're going to have to do this every time, or are we? Is this a case-by-case basis exceptional situation? Because I really don't like doing this.
I think that's a legal question. Every case is different. You have different testing.
It's a legal question. That's for you.
I'll have to get back to you, Commissioner. No. You do not set precedent in these matters. They are case-by-case analysis. The issue of lack of testing is not an indication that the construction was inadequate. It's the issue of the lack of verification that the construction was adequate. So when you accept this road without the proper inspection protocol having been followed, you are accepting the risk, however slight it might be, that the construction was not properly done and that the road will not last during the expected lifespan, which I believe is at least 10 to 15, 20 years.
At least 20.
At least 20 years.
So, but what I'm hearing is staff says yes.
To further articulate an answer to your question, that's why we provided the detailed summary that was attached to the board action request, so that you could clearly identify what the situation was with this case, and in the future you would receive a similar summary, and you would see that more than likely you're going to have different variables in a different situation. Each situation would be independent based upon whether you had failing tests or whether you had a lack of testing. In this case, they had a lack of testing in many situations, or in some cases, I believe, they tested the asphalt lift when it was still 220 degrees.
But quantities were correct.
Quantities were correct. They passed the visual inspection. They lacked nuclear density testing on the base, which should have been taken at a certain interval, and they lacked basically a cooling period of the asphalt and compaction on 2 tests. I believe those tests were read at over 200 degrees and at a compaction rate that would be the compaction rate of the paver without actually running a roller over it. And so they didn't wait for the contractor to complete the necessary work on the roadway prior to taking a few of the tests. They used a proctor that had organic material in it instead of the proctor for the site soils that they specifically stripped to build the road out of. So they basically tested the topsoil instead of the actual non-organic material and used that as their comparison variable for the roadway density tests, which is the correct procedure. So there are a multitude of testing issues. That does not necessarily mean that the road was built correctly or not. It just means that we don't have the verification necessary to, per county policy, accept the roadway, and therefore their only recourse is to bring this offer to the Board of County Commissioners. If the Board of County Commissioners does not accept that, their next action to make this investment that they've put into the county viable is to replat that property and maybe put in a cul-de-sac at the end of the roadway and disconnect it from the neighboring subdivision and have it be a private cross-access easement.
So to answer your question, Mike, staff says no. Okay. Any other questions for Bill on this?
No, I just think the 3-year maintenance bond is more than you get on anything. You know, if we accept a road, that's, you know, it's ours that day forward. But at least this one, we're getting a 3-year maintenance bond. And the first, when you're building houses and concrete trucks and gravel trucks and lumber trucks, it's going to get its use.
Bill, is there anything this maintenance bond doesn't cover? I mean, there's got limitations. Are there weight loads? Is there anything that this would not cover in case we had a failure?
I wouldn't be comfortable today stating that there's nothing that this wouldn't cover. I don't have a lot of experience pulling a maintenance bond. Generally, when you notify a contractor that they have a deficiency, they correct that without you ever going through the bonding company.
Okay.
I have never experienced a project where I've had projects where we've had major disagreements on whether something needed to be repaired, but ultimately any repairs that have ever been made have always been completed by the contractor. I don't believe contractors really ever want to risk their maintenance bond.
Thank you. David,
you have something?
Mr. Knoll's statements are correct. Contractors generally do not want you to have to contact their maintenance bond holder because it impacts their bonding ability. However, in the event that a claim has to be made against a maintenance bond, which we have done in the past, the original design specifications and contract documents control the extent of what is required by the bondholder.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Bill.
So I'm not a road engineer, but can't you replace the missing certifications with core sampling?
You can
to determine.
You could do that with any asphalt you wanted to do. The issue is, and this is the same issue that we ran into. This portion of it is the exact same issue that we had with the Baser Elementary School. Is you cannot test the compaction of the subgrade soils with a core sample. It does not measure density. It would measure soil type. So you could always test the asphalt, and you can test the type of soil that has been placed there to show. I mean, I visually saw it, but it wasn't organic material. They didn't put the topsoil on the top of the road, but there would be no way to actually test the compaction of the roadway subbase with core samples. You'd have to remove asphalt, and then once you've done that, in order to test the subgrade material, you've disturbed that subgrade material at that point, so it wouldn't necessarily be accurate anyway. So to answer your question shortly, no, there is not a way to do a core sample and test subgrade dirt compaction.
I just think you're covered with the maintenance bond myself. That's my opinion.
So just to clarify, and I know Commissioner Culberson said, but you're not recommending that we move ahead on this issuing a bond.
I did not make a recommendation. This is a decision of the Board of County Commissioners based upon your tolerance.
Does staff have a recommendation, or you're just leaving it on?
It's a subjective recommendation. So,
Commissioners, per policy.
Well, no, he sounded like an attorney is what he sounded like. So
per policy, we're not allowed to accept the roadway in its current state. That's why it's in front of the Board of County.
Right.
Very good, Bill. Nice try.
Can't pin anybody down around here, can we?
Say if we did accept it without a maintenance bond, it'd be ours that day forward.
Yep.
At least this way, you have a 3-year maintenance bond when the homes are being built, and if there's a failure, it's going to be fixed.
Yeah, I'm all for doing this, Doug. As far as these homes coming in, we definitely need it. The county's growing, one of the fastest growing counties in Kansas, but we just got to make sure we're covering all
This is
the.
no risk to the taxpayer.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm not
against
against it because we need development. There's no doubt.
I would like to see the maintenance bonds on the ones we do accept.
Yeah. Okay.
We can't do that. But with that being said, I move that we accept the roadway of Orchard Meadows by Precision Contracting Development with an extended 3-year maintenance bond.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Is there a way we can keep these things from continuing to happen, or can we make a complaint to the licensing board?
You could always go through the Board of Technical Professions if you wanted to take that route. There are going to be changes internally in the requirements of the inspectors. We have other subdivisions that we're currently inspecting that with other firms, but what we'll do is we'll require that the inspection firm provide the county a marked up construction set of the locations that they intend on testing in order to verify that the testing frequency is being done in a manner that is in accordance with the current KDOT policy. The only risk that you incur by doing that is if that information were to be shared with the contractor, then they would know where the testing was going to occur at. That's generally not what you want to have being passed around, and so it would have to be a document that only the county had a copy of at the time, and to ensure the completion of the work. But that is the discussion being had currently, is require a plan set to be marked up and provided by the construction engineering firm that shows the locations and the amount of testing that's going to be completed, and basically number those tests in a manner that you receive the testing and say, this is a test for point 1 of the subgrade testing, this is point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5. Basically, that's you're ensuring before the fact that they know what they're doing for the developer.
Can we ask for copies of, the logs?
We get it bi-weekly.
So the logs didn't indicate all logs indicated the testing had been done?
The logs that we received were after the asphalt base had been placed down. And so we usually receive logs on a bi-weekly basis, and there was not 2 weeks between the time that the base was completed and the asphalt. Usually, in a lot of cases, you'll have, once they receive a passing base, I believe in this case they paved the road 3 days later, or maybe even the next day.
So there was a passing base that was identified in the log?
In the log that was provided? No, that was provided after the asphalt had been put down. The logs were produced to the county, and they were not passing. But they were not necessarily provided to the contractor. Well, excuse me, I need to take that back. Sorry, Commissioner. The logs that were produced showed a couple failures at some crossroad culvert backfills and lacked the testing for the subbase. From the period of time that they completed the subbase and then put their rock base down to the testing period was not more than 2 weeks before they paved the road. So there was no way, once we were aware of the deficiencies, to go back and test that subbase.
So the new procedures you're developing, though, should go a long ways towards making it so this won't happen again.
The new procedures that we're considering is really the responsibility of the engineering firm that it should be competent to test at the frequency required by KDOT. So by doing that, we are introducing a responsibility to the county that we currently do not have. These
folks are certified by KDOT, and these are firms just like the ones that we would hire. In fact, we had hired this firm for a design, not an inspection, in the past, and they had done quality work for the county and had it done on time and at budget. But I mean, that is the consideration, is that we now make this requirement prior to the construction beginning to ensure that they know what they're doing.
That's too bad we have to do that.
And they have no
That requires county staff time.
And
accountability.
Commissioners, you know, historically, the way this all started out is we didn't do the inspections. Then we found that these roads were failing, so we added the step of you have to have an inspector, a certified inspector,
Right.
which is the responsibility of the contractor to go out and get somebody who's KDOT certified, and then that inspector is supposed to send somebody who's qualified and competent.
Right.
People miss things. That's what's happened.
Right.
But then we used to have an inspector
This is not a staff thing.
County.
It wasn't our responsibility to catch this.
Right.
That's why they hire the independent.
Budget cuts.
No, that's why I was just wondering, you know, when you have the person who was the independent inspector, where is their liability in all of this? Where is their accountability?
And if you didn't accept this today, I'm sure that the developer would be going back and finding out exactly what their liability was.
In a county situation, if we were unable to accept work being completed, it would be the financial responsibility of the person who was deficient, which would be the inspector.
So two things I want to point out. One, we used to have a county inspector to do this, but budget cuts got rid of them. Two, I don't think a lot of people understand why we're going through this process. The developer is responsible for building this road. It's coming out of his pocket. If the county accepts it, then after that, if the road fails, all the taxpayers in the county pay to fix it. That's why we have these rules in place. Any further discussion?
That's why the 3-year extended maintenance bond, I think, is a good deal.
It's-
I think it'll
That's
cover
the only
the
remedy that we
taxpayers.
really have.
Well, just to be able to minimize these things, you know, if you develop policies to minimize them, this is too bad.
It is
Especially
bad.
when they were hiring a firm off the qualified
Right,
list.
no, it's
Right.
really.
It's bad that we have to consider taking staff time to check the work of somebody who's supposed to be qualified and
On
competent.
a qualified contract.
And it's
Yeah.
also bad for the developers who
Right.
have hired the inspector to ensure that the contractor is building what they have had designed, so they're getting their money, they're getting what they are paying for. And so developers, in many cases, would like to have an inspector there to ensure that what they're paying their contractor for is what they're getting. And so this is, you know, it was a disservice to the developer. It's not
It's a
his
shame.
fault.
So I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Begin voting with myself, no.
Aye.
Aye.
I tell you, we just got to clean this up. I mean, I know it's not on you, Bill, but I want development in this county, and I want to give a benefit to the developer, but we just cannot have this stuff. But being that it's on a 3-year thing, I'll support it. I'll vote aye.
Motion carries 3-2. Next up, consider a motion to approve the 2025 dust control request form. Morning, Bill.
Morning, Commissioners, back again. All right, I'm going to get to the right page here.
Make this one easier, Bill.
We just like hearing your voice.
This should be pleasant.
Yes. All right. I know it'll take a few minutes, but I'd like to go through this policy. We had a fairly lengthy conversation about it 2 weeks ago, and we have reproduced some information from the past 4 years about the cost. We did not have the specific spreadsheets provided. We have provided those spreadsheets, and we have made some amendments to the policy. The previous proposal did not include these, all of these, so I wanted to go through them one at a time very quickly, as quickly as possible, to discuss any concerns that you have. These are different changes to this policy that weren't just discussed 2 weeks ago, but had been discussed over the previous 5 years. And so I've included all that discussion in this, just so you have the opportunity to pluck each one of the highlighted items out if you wanted to, in order to get this policy hopefully considered today. First, based upon the discussion, the board wanted to have a specific amount in mind that the county is subsidizing these roadways. So in the spreadsheets, we have provided the per year cost of each various years. In fact, the subsidies have gone down over the past 3 years, and you can see a significant decrease in price the past 2 years, and we have gone without an increase in lineal foot cost from a triple chip and seal application to an asphalt roadway application. I think that offers a much better future maintenance life cycle cost, and it does not require a 3-time mobilization to the site. But I wanted to point out that there was no increase in cost by the switch in that surface type from chip and seal to hard surface. For your consideration today, we do have the financing option that was discussed, whether it should be further incentivized or whether there should be the current cost should be held at $30 a lineal foot, and that there should be a financing assessment made if a person chooses to finance it over 5 years. And so proposed for your consideration is the financing fee of $140 per $1,000 financed. This is very close to 5% interest rate, which is a little bit above current CD interest rates, but is kind of close to what a person, if they just kept their money and put it in the bank, would receive. That puts our subsidy at about 7% based on the 4-year rolling average of the costs, and 8.4% subsidy of the cost of the hard surface if you just look at last year. Other amendments that are highlighted, the amount allowed to be financed would be limited to 50% of the property assessment that the financing is being applied to. This protects the county from individual financing $150,000 worth of roadway improvements on a lot that only is worth $120,000 for a vacant subdivision lot, or even less, maybe $95,000. Previously in the policy, there was no safeguards against over financing the value of the property. And so we do have quite a few of these that have been financed against vacant properties. I don't know that we have any currently that are financed at 100%, but we may have 1 or 2 that are at 50 or 60% of the property's value that has been financed. But this just ensures that in the case that someone does finance the whole half mile to say a subdivision lot, that amount is not all financed against a vacant lot that does not have the value in the county, therefore would be at risk. Stating that the program is not open to minimally maintained roads or roadways being constructed as part of a development is already current county policy by other documents, but we've added that to this policy because that question has come up recently and has come up multiple times over the past couple of years regarding whether or not this could be used to improve minimally maintained roads, especially those that may access a hard surface roadway. So that is not allowed currently under county policy, but that is not contained within this document, so we've added that to this document. Finally, all taxes being required in full is already a land division requirement. But what has been discussed by multiple people is if they, for instance, owned 120 acres, could they finance a half mile of roadway to access that 120-acre property? And prior to paying off their financing, could they then create a subdivision and then reallocate all of those special assessments to different lots within the subdivision? And that this this would prevent that from occurring. If you wanted to subdivide the property into a subdivision after you made the improvement, you would have to pay that special assessment off in full, which is a special tax assessment. It'd be like paying your taxes in full, any back taxes.
So wouldn't they just form a benefit district?
They could form a benefit district, or they could plat the property prior to doing the improvement, and then finance it against individual lots within the subdivision. It just does not allow you to finance it.
But individual lots, if they're being zoned, if they're agriculture until they're developed, then it wouldn't be worth that much to be able to finance against it.
Yes, that's correct. But we do have a couple properties that were, I think one was at least 160 acres, where there was some financing used on that particular property, and that owner had stated that he intends on it at some point in the future developing that property. At that point, he would need to.
And I agree, this shouldn't be a program for minimum maintenance roads because they don't have the base or anything like these regular county maintained gravel roads. I mean, they've been rocked and re-rocked and drove over. They've got a good base on them.
If you were to allow this for minimally maintained roads, the amount that you're subsidizing would greatly increase from the average 7%.
Yeah. Well, I think we do need to be subsidizing some of this because other people drive on these roads, and this is the only paving program we've got. There is no roads being paved.
And in the past, if you look back at 2022 and 2021, I believe the amount that you were subsidizing then is greater than the amount that you're currently subsidizing, just based upon efficiency improvements and service type changes.
Maybe we shouldn't do 10%, round it off to 10% instead of, what are you at now, 8.4?
8.4%.
Maybe it should be 10%, but the county subsidizes it. I mean, it's just not for one individual. I mean, somebody pays it, the general public gets to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not like we're out paving roads right now.
At all.
At all. There you go. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Agreed. It should be 10% subsidy. So, whatever that works out, that's what the price ought to be. I think he's got it covered on the finance because, like I said, the interest free, I don't think that was right. I think,
I think we need to change the price from like 30 down to 29.50 or something.
I don't have a problem with that 10%.
Well, I just think we should, because like I said, it's not just one individual driving on this road. It's open to the public.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Second.
Motion and a second to make it 10%?
Yeah. Let the Stanley subsidize 10% of the dust abatement.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Begin voting myself. Aye.
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 Motion carries at 10%. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next, consider a motion to consider the Planning Commission's recommendations regarding the rezoning request from R5 to R2.5 in case DV 24-116 for board action. Morning, Amy and John.
Morning, gang.
All right, before you is case DEV 24-116, which is a request to rezone the property located at 18415 Eisenhower Road from RR5 to RR2.5. The Planning Commission did consider this at their October meeting. They voted to recommend denial on a vote of 6-3, based off of their interpretation of this not meeting the golden factors number 1 and number 2, which is the character of the neighborhood and nearby zoning. If you have any questions, please let us know. Staff did provide the full staff report and analysis and minutes for you to review.
Did this, on the checklist, did this meet all the checklists that we require?
So that checklist that you're talking about in the staff report was staff's analysis of the golden factors. Staff did recommend to the Planning Commission approval primarily because it did meet the future land use map.
Okay.
It's in our comp plan.
Correct.
And like it was said earlier, it was in both comp plans as this. And I think the concept drawing was probably the big deal because this is just a rezone. This isn't a plat. And a lot of the things would be addressed during the plat when they're talking about water runoff and different things like that. That's all addressed in the platting process, not the rezone.
Correct.
So,
So I have a question for you guys, your department. If we're looking at character of the neighborhood and we're looking at the issue of zoning, nearby zoning, there are some properties that are zoned with smaller acreages nearby. Is that correct?
Are you talking about the zoning designation or the
No,
size?
one of the factors is the nearby zoning.
Correct.
So there are some properties that are zoned, in my understanding, is nearby properties that are zoned and are smaller acreages.
All adjacent properties are zoned RR5 with the exception of one parcel that is zoned B3. If you're talking about the size of the parcel,
I'm talking about existing properties.
there are some parcels that are less than 5 acres that are adjacent to this, yes.
So would that not be taken into consideration when we're looking at that factor?
When staff looked at that factor, yes. We noted that sizes and parcels range from 1.4 acres to over 150 for the adjacent parcels.
So my question would be for the Planning Commission would be, did you take that into account and did you consider that, planning commissioners, that there are properties in the vicinity that are zoned or are in existence that are smaller acreages? And I listened to most of their of that meeting, but I don't know if that was taken into consideration.
I can't tell you what was in the minds of the planning commissioners. I can only say what they said. They most felt that the surrounding parcels were of larger size, and therefore they felt it did not meet factors 1 and 2.
Okay, and then on the factor of character of the neighborhood, that is a very subjective factor. So I guess the material I've received from the Planning Commission, I would like to have specificity from the Planning Commission as to exactly why does this not meet the character of the neighborhood when there are neighboring parcels that are smaller. So if the Planning Commission could define it better for us, we would have a better understanding in it. And so my suggestion is that we send it back to the Planning Commission asking for specific explanation on the factors.
Well, I think, and this is my opinion, I understand what you're asking, but that's not really where we're at on this. This is simply making the zoning map match the comprehensive plan that we've already approved. That's all this is.
But the land use map is not the Bible.
That's
the
right.
Land use
but
map
it's what we
is
approved.
simply the land use map,
That's
and
right.
it is discretionary.
That is correct.
And I take it seriously that the Planning Commission made a denial.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
I would
understand.
like to have more defined reasoning for the denial. And also the fact is that when it comes back, if it does come back, there's a different vote requirement at that point. I just think we need to have more explanation from them.
I understand, but what I'm trying to point out is what a lot of people don't understand is we've adopted this land use map, the comprehensive plan. We didn't go back and change or update the zoning map to match the comprehensive plan. That's exactly what this is doing.
Right. And I would point out, John, you told me that this part of the land use map predated any changes that we had made in the land use map, like in the last 5 years.
Right. This particular section of the map remained unchanged from the Planning Commission recommendation to your approval. It was always.
So I think there's some planning commissioners that have made some statements about that we made these changes as the Board of County Commissioners to that land use map. And the fact is, we did not, in this case, make changes at that location to the land use map. It was the land use map that existed even before.
Right.
So that I just think we all got to get on the same page on some of these things. But I personally think that we've tried to make a practice when they send denials from Planning Commission that we send it back.
That's your motion?
Yeah. I would like to make a motion that we send this case back to the Planning Commission and request that they have more specificity on the issue of character of the neighborhood in relation to the fact that there are existing parcels that are of smaller size, and giving us more definitive reasons for their decision.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I want to make sure I have all the answers. So I may not fly, but I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with myself. No.
No. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Motion denied, 3-2. I'll entertain another motion from anyone in any way, shape, or form.
Well, let me ask you this. On this next motion getting ready to come up, since it was denied by the Planning Commission, it takes 4 of the 5 of us to approve it, is it?
Supermajority
Yeah.
to approve it.
So 4 have to be affirmative on this to approve it. Okay. Just want to make sure I was clear.
Okay. All right. I move consider approving the rezoning request from RR5 to R2.5 in case number DEV 241-116.
Have a motion. Do I have a second?
One moment, Commissioner. Since you are moving to approve the application, are you making any particular findings as to the golden factors?
That it meets the comp plan, it matches the comp plan and our land use plan.
I'm taking it that your motion is that it complies with the golden factors.
Yes, it does.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I'll second it for further discussion.
Yeah, I just want to make something clear. I'm not. I noticed they followed the rules that we put out, and if we put out rules and people follow them, we probably should have look at that very seriously. But I was kind of confused on the Planning Commission, and I know we can get this back in front of us pretty quick. So I understand, Commissioner Stephen, what you were asking. That's all I have to say.
I would say that we have tried to make procedure important on this. When the Planning Commission makes a decision, that we should respect their thoughts. And part of the procedures we have said that we will try to send things back and follow the procedure. So for appearances and for the importance my personal view is, I have a personal view on whether this fits or not, but to follow the procedure and to make it I think there's optics of how this should look and due process and how we should do our business here. I think it would be best to send it back.
I'd like to support staff on these recommendations.
Understand.
Any other discussion? Being voting with myself, aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
No, it doesn't.
No. It's
Has to be 4, doesn't it? So it doesn't carry.
I'd like the county commissioner consider sending this back, even though it'll be coming back.
You're making a motion, right?
Planning Commission. Let me just ask this. What's a turnaround, John?
No additional as I understand it from legal, and Misty can interrupt me at any time, no additional publication is necessary when you send it back, so we could get that on the November 15th, is that 13th? November 13th agenda, and then follow right back.
So one instruction, are you saying instructions so they be more specific on the factors?
Mike, you can go ahead and make the motion, because I was agreeing with you.
Okay, I'll move that we send this back to the Planning Commission for requesting specificity on their interpretation of the goal of the character of the neighborhood in relation to the fact that there are existing homesteads that are of the smaller acreages and other factors.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Beginning voting with myself. Aye.
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 That one carries 5-0. Thank you, folks.
Thanks,
Next
John.
up, consider a
Thanks,
motion to approve Board Order 24-8, granting disaster relief tax abatement for buildings on 24625 200th Street and tax credit for buildings on 25214 163rd Street substantially destroyed by fire. Morning, Bob.
Morning.
Morning, Bob.
So request an action, Board Order 2024-8. There are two properties here. The first one was destroyed, is a house destroyed by fire July 7th, 2024. We're asking for abatement of $20,509 in assessed valuation. That was KSA 79-1613 specifies, allows commissioners to abate property taxes for homes destroyed by natural disaster or fire January 1st through August 15th. So we're asking for an abatement against 2024 taxes for that one. And the second one is a property where an outbuilding was destroyed by fire on September 19th, 2024. And again, the statute allows the Board of County Commissioners to grant a tax credit against property taxes payable in the next succeeding 3 years for property destroyed after August 15th, but before January 1st of the next succeeding year. So the one would be a abatement, and the other one's a tax credit against 2025 taxes.
And we didn't have the authority at the county level to do this before the state law passed, right?
Yeah, that was around 2012, 2013. It was there January 1st. It was on for the year.
Okay.
And then the most recent was the outbuilding.
That's outbuilding. That's right.
The outbuildings we got added.
That's what it was. It was the outbuilding. Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Or questions for Bob?
Make a motion to approve Board Order 2024-8, granting disaster relief tax abatement for building on 246-250 200th Street and a tax credit for building on 25214 163rd Street substantially destroyed by fire.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with myself. Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Thanks, Bob.
Stay seated.
Next up, presentations, discussion items, quarterly reports. County Appraiser. Morning, Bob.
Morning again, Commissioners.
Nice, Jeff.
You can see we put our maintenance re-inspections, highlight that we inspected 9,601 parcels this year. It's about 29% of the total parcel count. And the numbers there, we're basically wrapping up the maintenance re-inspection. We're required to visit every property once every 6 years, so we try to divide up in even portions every year, as even as we get it. And we wrap that up, and we also have to inspect sales, properties, and then that actually, this inspection is a little more thorough. And then we have to, obviously building permits and that sort of thing. Inspect for those. We certified personal property, the second certification, because there's many changes that go on with personal property proration and that sort of thing through the year. And I provided those values. The reason I provided those like that is, to show that the classifications of personal property, and there's some legislation that's been proposed last year, speculation there will be legislation this year to take that back up, was to exempt some of that property. You got mobile homes, you got heavy motor vehicles, those are ones that are 24M tags and above. Then you got 16M, 20Ms. that are taxed, and then and then you got commercial, industrial machinery and equipment, other non-commercial, other commercial, and watercraft. The legislation last year was to exempt most of what you say is 6A and non-commercial and Class 7 watercraft. It doesn't make sense to leave in, if you're going to exempt, most of that was ATVs, trailers, those sorts of things, what makes up the bulk of that class of property. The only other things, really, there's a few, like hot air balloons. I think we actually got one, and some other stuff in that class, but some other miscellaneous. But most of it's things like off-road vehicles and that sort of thing. And then the bill also would have exempted watercraft. A few years ago, they reclassified watercraft was assessed at 30%, like most of the other personal property, and they moved that down to 5%. Well, that brings in, it's a lot of work for what it brings in for tax dollars.
So on the watercraft, we had a storage location where they were bringing in a lot of watercraft, but we don't seem to be getting much benefit out of that, like we thought.
Out of county watercraft.
Right.
Yeah.
For January
What's the issue with that?
It's being assessed at 5% for one thing.
But are we getting?
We should be getting them. I'll check back. We have sent them letters in the past saying they're required to render to us the watercraft that are being stored there as of January 1st.
So I think 7 in the whole county. That's.
Is that? No, that's not 7.
It's not 7.
That's Class 7.
The Class 7. Okay.
Okay. No, there's not.
So there's a lot more than 7.
There's a lot more.
Thank goodness. Because we had that whole storage.
Right. But
that had come in, and that was a lot of.
All of them were out of county storage,
right. But we're supposed to get the benefit of that, right?
On January 1.
Right.
They're supposed to be if they're here.
But we don't know if we are or not.
I'll go back and check and see what they're rendering. Off the top of my head, I don't know what they are.
Right.
You might have to work New Year's Day and go around and find it.
Yeah, not me. Well, you're going to have time.
Commissioner, looking at this valuation, and I'm just trying to do the math off the top of my head, and I think this is to Bob's point. Even if you doubled that, it's still less than $7,000 in property tax countywide. So even if you doubled that to up to close to $2 million, it's probably less than $7,000 in property tax.
Okay.
Well, we're looking for any money we can find.
Okay. So that's the reason, and it was county appraisers that approached the bill, that recommended this legislation for this because the amount of tax dollars coming in and the amount of work, it doesn't equate. The other category that is being discussed, it wasn't in last year's bill, is commercial industrial machinery equipment. As you're aware, legislature exempted all commercial industrial machinery equipment purchased on or after July 1st, 2006.
We remember that year well.
18 years beyond that, they were supposed to reimburse the county on
10 years.
Scale to 2014, I think it was. But when the financial crisis hit around 2008, somewhere in there, that ended abruptly.
We got it for 6 months.
Surprise.
There's a pattern here.
Abruptly. You think, Mike?
What you're saying is the state that had made an agreement that they were going to exempt this machinery from taxation, they would hold the counties whole for a certain period of time, and they didn't live up to that agreement.
Surprise.
Shocker.
In 6 months. I think they did it for 6 months.
They
They were going to do it for 10 years.
And to add to that, had no repercussions from the public. They just did it.
And that was huge.
On the last day of the session, because I remember it specifically, it was the last day of the session, and it was approved I believe, after 11 p.m.
So,
But before 1 a.m.
if you were in a city or a county, you remembered that day.
Yep. Which made your property taxes go up a little bit.
City administrator.
Everybody else's
Remember
property
Remember
taxes
that day.
increased significantly.
Mhm.
Yep.
And nobody said anything.
I call it the breaking and entering because it was the business and machinery the BME built. I called it breaking and entering at the time because at the middle of the night they broke in and took all of our money. Sorry.
And it was overnight.
That's true. That's true, Mark.
And they paid it for 6 months.
And then when they do that, that puts the weight back on
Property
property
tax.
taxes.
Yep, exactly my point. And nobody said anything. But then they complain that their property taxes are high.
Moving forward, it becomes a fairness issue now. You have machinery and equipment purchased before July 2006 that's on the tax rolls, and you have new business in competing with them purchased after that date that they're not paying. That category just kind of decreases gradually over the years because as people get rid of equipment. But that is also being talked about as possibly going away too. If you put all those categories together, against our county, just the county levy, 35 mills, that's $214.592. All those put together. So that puts it somewhat perspective of what that counts. Now, the machinery and equipment might have a little bit more resistance to it. I know, like in Sedgwick County, it provides, they have industrial type businesses that have equipment that they use that they don't get rid of, that's used years and years. So it provides a little bit more valuation there proportionally than it does here in a county like Leavenworth County. Sales received, I think we're still up a little bit over previous years for the first 3 quarters, but it's slowing down. The sales always slow down, but in this part of the year, but it's slowing down more than normal. August, it really started to drop off. So, beginning part of the year, we were up over last year, but the market, the number of sales, anyways, has slowed down over from really the second half of this year. So, to give you the average sale prices, you can see it's up a little bit, not much. Trends are kind of hard to nail down right now. But that's, the average sale prices are up just a little bit, not much. Building permits, this is cities and counties together that we have in our system, first 3 quarters, and we're up over last year. I think the counties are up. You received a report last week on that. But this is the whole county, cities and county combined. Those are new homes. Those are not other permits for sheds or roofs or anything like that. And then I put in their sales ratio again. You kind of see where we're at. It was about what it was last time. We're kind of holding steady right around 90% of the median, our appraised value compared to sale prices. So we're about 90% of what they're selling for.
So, Bob, on that, a lot of people I don't think understand. They'll say things like, I don't know how the county comes up with my value. Doesn't make any sense. So what they do, the state makes you compare houses that actually sold.
Well, that's the way any appraisal is usually done, is you have to have something of known value to start with. A sale price is a known value. And so you take homes as similar as you can find in location, size, style, age, those sorts of things. And then you compare those to the property you're trying to generate a value for. You make adjustments for differences. One has a double car garage, one has a single car garage. You've got to make an adjustment to the sale price. You come up with those adjustments first, and then you pull those. We pull 5 properties, and then you make those adjustments, and you come up with, from that, as adjusted sale prices, you come up with an indicated market value for that property.
I thought we had a state representative say we just tell him what we need, and that's how he.
Yeah, if we need more money, we tell them to raise value. What I was getting at was. Hold on.
That Ed.
So what I'm getting at
Let's
is.
call him out. Ed, that's you.
That means we gotta have a speech from Ed.
So what I'm getting at is the state makes sure that you had a value on a property that is within 10% of what it actually sold for. And that's what the sales ratio bears out. And you had to be within 10% lower or 10% higher than what that house actually sold for.
Or the median ratio overall.
Yeah. And you're consistently around 10% lower than what houses are actually selling for.
Yep.
So I don't think a lot of people understand that we have a window. The state allows the appraiser to be 10% higher or 10% lower than what it actually sells for, and you're pretty much consistently 10% lower than what they're selling for in Leavenworth County. So I just want to make sure people understand
let me specify, this is the second and third quarters. They will run one all the way back to January 1st. And we were closer January 1st, January, February, March, so these numbers will be a little bit higher for the first part of the year. The reason I only use second and third quarters, we value as of January 1st. We send valuations March 1st. I want to leave out any, knowing about a sale price, knowing about a listing. We've had a chance to correct the data on it because I want to look at exactly where we're at, not knowing anything about the property, that it's a potential sale or anything. So it represents better of where you're at countywide.
Yeah, and the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of work that goes into trying to remain at the lowest possible value the state will allow us to carry on these properties at the very bottom of the 10%
It's not easy, especially when values are changing. You're going through changes in the market. If things are going along fairly steady, it's not as bad. But when you have big upswings, big downswings,
last few years,
just it changing, it's a little difficult to know where you should be.
But I think the bottom line is we also need to continue to consider the fact that it is property values is what we have to use or what we collect to budget.
Yeah.
We don't have the privilege that the state has of using sales tax and income tax as a basis of how we pay the bills. So the valuations may go up, but your property taxes are still, when you're paying that bill to pay your property taxes based on what we determine to be our budget, the valuation of your home is really not going to negative. It looks horrible because it looks like but you're still going to pay the same amount of money as a homeowner, unfortunately. Because that's the way we have to pay the bills, is that whatever we set the mill at, whatever we set as our budget, that's how much that's your portion of what's going to be paid. It's unfortunate.
You fired my soapbox off, unfortunately for you. The state of Kansas funds their budget with two primary revenue sources. Income tax, which is, I think, like 64% of their budget. And then sales tax, which is 35%. And then less than 1% are other taxes and fees. They don't use property tax at all to fund their operating budget. The 1.5 mils that they levy goes towards the capital plans for school buildings and other buildings. So they realize that property tax is unsustainable for funding their budget.
Right.
But the rules that they give us to play by makes it so that a lot of our budget is funded by property tax because it's really the only tax we're allowed to collect.
That's what I'm trying to get out there.
The sales tax that we collect, the 1%, that's the cap, by the way, that they've put on us. It goes straight to roads. We do not use it for operating expenditures like wages, salaries, anything like that. It goes to roads, materials, roads improvements. That's it. Everything else we have to either budget it off of fees that we collect, like at the the transfer station or property tax.
And the voters agreed to allow us to do that with the sales tax.
That was on the ballot.
It was on the ballot.
So, if I'm looking at this paragraph on the sales ratio and I look at the various communities, would I be justified in saying that in Baser, when the properties are selling, they're close to the price?
Yeah, they are this year, yeah. And we've taken note of that. And we'll look at that when we're valuing.
And is that I don't know where they fit in the expense category, but I think Baser's pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
As far as average
value.
yeah.
Yes.
So, and a lot of activity in Baser.
There is a lot of activity.
They bring a lot to the table.
They are
That's
gonna
probably
pay-
also why it's so close.
They
have so many
Right.
sales centers.
And their tax bill is going to be.
They add the
higher.
most
Yeah, it will be.
new construction to each year.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Bob?
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Next up, quarterly report for EMS Health Department. Morning, Jamie.
Morning, Jamie.
Preference on which department we start with?
Nope, whatever you want.
We can start in EMS. Standard quarterly report for third quarter. We're on track, actually tracking a little bit in budgetary expenses. However, some of the capital expenditures that are obviously larger are not in there reflecting. So if you were to add that in, we're tracking right along where we should for expenditures. User fees, we're tracking right ahead of schedule a little bit in regards, and also on some of my items that I have for reporting. We did switch over to a new electronic billing, which is expediting some of the retrieval of revenue based off of now that it's going in electronically to almost every one of the insurance companies. We're receiving payment quicker back.
Yeah.
So that's why we're seeing some of that. Again, number two is just statistics like normal. The run comparison is below its projected, so it's showing the third quarter also projected all the way through the year. So it looks like we're going to be on track with our runs. Moving forward, again, response times, call volumes, those are all just the statistics that I provide. On page 4 is the breakout geographically that I started including in the report for your area, so you can kind of see where call volume sits throughout the county. Vehicle maintenance, we're kind of on track with vehicle maintenance. We've obviously had some issues with vehicle maintenance just because of, again, we're holding trucks a little longer than we used to just because of how long it's taking to get the replacement ambulances. There was a delay because of the hurricanes. We still have not taken possession of those 2 trucks. The one just left actually on, I believe it was Monday, out of North Carolina to start heading this way. So hopefully sometime mid-November we should have those 2 replacement ambulances in. We're still on track for the 2025, hopefully in that January, February time frame to receive that unit. So, and then again, just as a reminder, we also have the 2026, 2027, as I was in here a couple weeks ago getting those. Those have been ordered. We've sat down with the vendor on those. Updates and staffing. I can say that a little bit of improvement there. We're down to only 2 paramedic positions. We have 2 medic that just came on this last week that are out in orientation and such at this time. So 2 more we're looking for, but that's better than the 7 that were reported in the last.
I think so.
And I can appreciate from the board on addressing the salary discrepancies. I think it is a driving force for us to be able to obviously retrieve some applicants. We also had a paramedic coming back to us. She'll actually be back in with the administration on Monday after an 18-month deployment overseas. So that's a plus. Again, we switched over billing. We're in the process of updating cardiac monitors, which is that's about every 10 years we kind of do that. So that's a capital expense that was already in the budget as such. So we're moving forward with that. During the third quarter, we did have our Kansas Board of EMS inspection, our annual inspection. Again, that is a pretty thorough inspection. 2 inspectors from the state come in and spend quite a bit of time. They touch every ambulance. They look over everything administratively as well. And we received a perfect inspection again this year with no deficiencies noted. We also received quite a few of the used radios from the Sheriff's Department because they had to upgrade to encryption and such.
Yep.
And we reached out immediately because those radios could still be used.
Snatched.
So we snatched all the radios that we could, reprogrammed those, and are putting those in service. So, again, savings to the county, just relocating some of the radio equipment that is out there. So with that, that's kind of the EMS department for third quarter.
I had a question for you on the number of runs there. Sherman Township versus Linwood. It seems like quite a few runs in Linwood. Has that been typical?
It's
It
EMS.
varies.
It varies. You have to really look kind of year to year and see specifically on where things are moving and then start tracking those so you see trends and not just you can have a week that you have an influx of calls somewhere and then you may not run any calls there for weeks. So that's why it's important to really look at those.
So if a person does, like, say you have a whatever type of person, but they've called had 3 different calls in Linwood in the last 2 weeks, they're registering as 3 calls.
Those are 3 calls. Okay. Yeah. So if you have someone that has a chronic illness somewhere and is calling EMS consistently to that address, those are all calls to that because again, an ambulance had to go to that location.
So it could be the same person.
Correct.
Anything else on EMS? I was going to add to that the ad hoc committee we put together on Fort Leavenworth, or the federal use of our EMS service, continues. Senator Marshall's office has now also been added to that group, and so we're moving forward with the talks to ask the feds to supply a pilot check of sorts for our EMS services because their MOU is going to expire here shortly. Yeah. And I wanted to get this worked out before we interrupted services up there. So that's continuing.
I like that.
Next.
Okay. Health Department, same thing. We're tracking appropriately for budgetary expenses. Again, for the third quarter, user fees, we're appropriate for where we should be for user fees. Currently, as you can see down in items to report, August, September is a busy time frame for immunization. So third quarter is when we see quite a bit of user fee revenue that comes in from insurance and also private. So we should see revenue pick up appropriately for that as well. Grants, we're running appropriately on grants. One of the things that I have down in items to report there at the bottom, under family planning grant, for years they have always pushed us during the grant cycle to ask for more money, ask for more money. They've always usually awarded us somewhere right around about $39,000 for that program. We put in more money. We analyzed and put in as much as we could for that. So I asked for $81,616. And then this year they came back and said, great, here's $54,000 for it. And I said, no. So we re-challenged it, reopened it. And after the resubmittal of the grant, I want to give staff kudos back at the office and everything else. They actually did award us our full amount of $81,000.
That's great. Great.
So kudos to them and doing the work and during our audits and using all the documentation from everything that we were able to really demonstrate to the state that we really needed more money to continue funding that program. So basically, it over doubled almost our last several years of what they provided to us. So kudos to them on that. And then we've had a public health nurse retire. We were able to, during that time frame, acquire another public health nurse during that time. She's up and running. She's doing great with us. So the only position that I have really available right at the moment is we had one of our registered dietitians out of the WIC department. She's actually relocated out to the Manhattan area, and she's working at the Fort Riley Hospital. So can't down her for that. She got a great position with the hospital out there and in a new system. So we'll be looking for a registered dietitian. Again, we just had a state audit for TPT and PMI, which is our pregnancy maintenance initiative and teen pregnancy grants with the social worker and such. In all tertiary looks of what happened, we've passed, no issues there as well. So we're just waiting on the actual document to come back from the state that said we passed with lack of a flying colors. So that's a plus as well for the staff. And then we're obviously getting ready for county health assessments. That will be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. So we're ramping up for that. That'll be long days for some of my staff out there. That will be start from 6 in the morning or earlier, and they end at 8 at night most of those nights. So we'll have some long days.
Long days.
Those, but that's a plus. Any questions?
I have a question for you. The family planning grant, does that allow? Are there strings attached to that, or can you use that for salaries, or you have a lot of discretion on using that money?
Yeah, the majority of Commissioner, when I came on in 2009 for the health department, the grants were really strung apart, using it for all sorts of things. We've restructured the grants so that a majority of all the grant dollars that come in are for salaries, for employees that are out there to back cover all of that. And then that way the program costs, we can control those program costs is what we need to for using any local match dollars that have to. So that way we don't lose any money because everything is reimbursable. So we have to kind of pay it and then we're reimbursed the next quarter. So I want to collect that full $81,000. As solid cost of that is personnel. We collect that full amount of money, and then if we don't spend something in that quarter, we don't lose any money out of that grant.
Great, that's smart.
Yeah. Very good.
Any other questions for Jamie?
No.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Jamie. And your staff. Thank you.
Any other presentation discussion items from the board? I don't have anything this week. Doug, do you have anything?
Election. Yep. Open for early voting, and you may have to give me the. Are they open until we close the courthouse at 4:45? Is that
What for?
downstairs?
Downstairs, yeah, until the last day will be
Monday
at noon.
Okay.
Is the
So, and I think there's been over 6,000 people have voted.
been quite a
Yeah, it's
few.
been quite a few. Deputies said they're coming through. Yeah, you're right, Mike.
And then next Tuesday, the polls are open 7 to 7.
Right.
Yeah.
So be sure to get out and vote.
And if you're in line by 7,
You get a
Get
stand.
through.
some states seem to have that excuse.
Well, not us.
I had the Transit Authority meeting last week. There's one thing I want to clarify to my fellow commissioners out of respect is that I did vote today, and that is because it was stated that I had ownership in the property that was being discussed. I do not. I have never had any ownership in that property. The property is owned by my children, or their business. I have no ownership in that business, neither does my husband. I have zero conflict, and I probably would not have been as deciding to do that, except that it was not true. It was stated in the planning and zoning meeting that I owned the property, and I think that's very unfair because I don't. I have never owned it. I've never had any part of it. And I think, and part of what we require is my understanding, and because I was not involved in any of this whole thing, is that we ask for the people who are asking for a rezone to give a concept plan. My son, probably it wasn't he didn't understand that he had to give like the maximum of what, when they were asking what would be on, what is it called, the platting and things. You know, he thought he needed to show exactly how much, exactly maximum what 2.5 would look like. What he found out subsequently was that he could have just said, we're going to have on a replat or whatever in the plan, 2.5, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, he was trying to be completely transparent and honest. This is what it could look like, but they have no intention of developing it at this point in time. They were kind of like, we've had people in the past that have said, for the purposes of the future,
Just one house.
you know,
chunk off a piece of
You know,
property.
but that is not something that I think that they were considering. I don't discuss that things with them, and so I just decided for once, I am not, when I don't have a conflict, and ethically I am allowed to exercise my role as a county commissioner.
I agree.
I made a determination, a personal decision to exercise that role because I do not have a conflict, have never had the conflict, and I was not pleased to know that it was stated that I did and that I owned that property, and I don't.
You know, Vicki, when it comes down to whether you're the county or a city commissioner or whatever, as long as it's very clear in the books, as long as you're not receiving anything, it's your duty to vote.
Right, and that's why
And so I don't have a problem with you.
I'm just
voting
letting you know
whatsoever.
that
But that's the other
I
reason.
wanted you to know that
Sure.
that was, otherwise, normally I'll say I'll abstain just because of appearances, but it's like, nope, not doing it.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
going to.
And that's the reason I don't have a problem with this plan. And after Mike asked a couple of questions, I just wanted a couple of things cleared up. Once they cleared up, I'll be fine to make my decision. So I didn't have an issue with what's going on with this at all.
I'm just wanting you guys
Well, it's
to know
just
that
too bad
normally,
that people can go to the planning commission
and say anything.
and say anything.
I know.
You know, they don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Well, I think we're trying to tell the planning commission we want some answers now.
Well,
Why did you do that?
we
Planning
spent
Commission?
$285,000 on a con.
I know, and I agree with that. But why, planning commission, did you say that? Tell me the reason why. And if no answer comes back, kind of sums it up to me.
That would be like saying that Doug was related to the individual who made the.
Or Doug and I
claim
are
of-
related, and we vote together. And
And
God
then-
knows we know that's not true.
I'm just saying that, you know,
Well, your last name's Smith.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of those.
I know, like when it comes.
Do you have anything, Mike?
Just going to be doing the judging at 12:45 at Council on Aging.
Fine.
Looking forward to that.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
All right.
I.
Let's get this work session going.